Hey everyone, David Ryshpan here again on YouTube. Today I want to talk about the single most important skill every improviser needs. Let's get into it. So what is the single most important skill for any improviser to have? It's to remember what we played. All of my favorite soloists and improvisers, no matter the style, no matter their instrument, they are all masters of motivic development. And in that motivic development, there is this balance that I love of making the spontaneous, and it's clearly spontaneous, but it also feels inevitable. When they resolve a phrase, when they get to the end of the development of the idea, it feels like that's the only place in the world it could have ended up, that it could have gone. So how do we develop our motivic development? How do we develop this skill of remembering what we played? The first thing we need is to have a memorable melody. In order to remember what we played, we need something worth remembering. So to focus on strong melodies and strong motifs, strong cells, I often refer to them as cells, that we can develop, that we can create variations on, that can sustain us for one chorus, two choruses, five choruses, however long we choose to develop this idea. Cells can be small. These melodies can be small, and actually the smaller the melodic fragment, the easier it is to spin off variation after variation after variation. The chord progression we're working with today is just two chords. The first chord is E minor 9, and the second chord is C dominant 9, C7. So there's really only one note that changes between those two chords, and that's the B natural which then falls to B flat on the C7 chord. It becomes the dominant 7 of the C7 chord. That F sharp is optional. It would be the sharp 11 on C7. So if you watched my previous video, the Why I Don't Think About Scales video that built on the Move Love breakdown I posted a few weeks ago, one of the methods I talked about was targeting notes that change between the two chords. So one thing I can take account of, again, I want to get away from this concept or this phrase of thinking about things, because really in the opening playing example, I'm just thinking of the melody. I'm thinking of how can I vary this melody? How can I create new variations on this melody? How can I develop this melody? I'm not thinking about target notes consciously, but it is a subset of the tools that I'm using to vary the melody. I hope that's clear. To phrase it another way, what I'm actively, consciously thinking about in my thought process is varying the melody, creating melodies, developing the melody I played, and creating new ones. In the service of doing that, I have a bunch of tools that I can use. And one of those tools is being aware of the target notes and creating melodies that will reflect the target notes or land on the target notes. But the target note is not the main goal there. The target note is just a tool I am using in service of the goal, which is to create melodies. I remember watching an interview with Bobby McFerrin, and the interviewer asked him how he could go on stage in front of a sold-out concert hall, solo a cappella, and improvise for an hour or an hour and a half. And Bobby McFerrin's response, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something like, I know that when I open my mouth, something is going to come out. And then once it's out, it's too late. Once that first idea is out in the world and in the atmosphere, then as improvisers, we have all these tools, we have all these instincts, we have all this material, and we're aware of all the possibilities of what we can do to that idea. The hardest part is the first idea. The hardest part is combating and attacking the blank page, right? But if we are confident that no matter what idea comes out, we are able to develop it, that's the skill that we need. That's the skill that we're working towards. So I'm just going to play without the track. I'm just going to improvise over those two chords, and I'm going to take whatever the first idea that comes out right now, and I'm going to take it through those two chords for a little bit. So I hope in that little fragment, without the track, just alone in the mix, that you were able to see and hear what I took from that first melodic cell, and then how it developed, and then how I took something that came out of that development, and that became the new cell. And then I kept developing on that new cell, and then developing on that new cell, etc., etc., etc. I always compare it to the children's game of broken telephone, where, you say a phrase and whisper it to the next person in the circle, and by the time it gets back to the first person, it's an entirely different phrase. And unless someone intentionally sabotaged the game, and even if they did sometimes, you can still kind of find the original kernel of what the original phrase was, and you can kind of find your way back. So the best way to exercise this muscle of being able to remember what we played is to just try and remember what we played and to create very strong and simple melodies and work on transforming them, developing them. So one thing we can do is use call and response as a template for this type of practice. So we're going to keep the cell as a call, and then we're going to change the response every time. This The second way to build that muscle of remembering what we played, remembering what we improvised, is through recording ourselves and listening back to recordings of ourselves. And one of the hardest things that I had to develop as an improviser, the hardest thing for me to develop as an improviser, was having this sense of distance in the moment. So staying in the moment, being attentive to the moment, what's happening in the rest of the band, what's happening if it's a multidisciplinary thing with dancers or whatever, being aware of what's going on, attentive and responsive to what's going on, but then also having a little bit of distance, almost as though I'm looking over my own shoulder in a way, if that makes sense. And it's kind of like I see laid out in front of me, I see all the possibilities of what I just played. And you can build that with literal time and space distance by recording yourself. And you hear the idea you played, the original melodic or harmonic idea you played on the recording. And then in listening back to it, it's like, oh, well, I could have gone here. I could have gone there. I could have done this. I could have developed that more. You start to refine your own instincts with the time and space of listening back to it later. And you kind of, at least for me, I was able to shrink that distance in a way. I was able to act like I was listening to a recording, but in the moment of improvising, if that makes sense. It's almost as though when I'm improvising, I now see a bunch of different pieces of paper on the floor or on the music stand. And it's just like I choose the next sketch, the next page, because I see all the variations that are available in front of me. The third way of developing this skill is to transcribe other people's solos. Transcribe solos that really captivate you, really move you, really inspire you. And by transcribe, I don't necessarily mean write it down. For me, in my process over the years that I've been doing this, I prefer to have it written down. I prefer to be able to see the whole thing in front of me and then isolate certain phrases, certain pieces of it, and work on it chunk by chunk or analyze it chunk by chunk. But you don't have to write it down. If your ears are really good and your memory is really good, you can just do it by ear and by memory. And the point is to understand and to analyze how your favorite soloists get from point A to point B. How did they develop that melody? How did they arrive at this place of resolution that feels like it's the only logical place it could have gone, the only logical place, or the only emotionally fulfilling place that that phrase and that arc and that story could have gone? It has to go there. It has to land on that note. It has to land on that idea. It has to land in that part of the bar, on that beat, whatever it is. Really breaking it down and understanding, analyzing, figuring out, oh, they developed that idea is connected to the first idea, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you understand, you see, if you wrote it down, you can literally see how that soloist gets from one place to the next. I'm going to link a video in the description of Chris Potter with Snarky Puppy on the tune Lingus. I love Chris Potter. I love Snarky Puppy. And that solo in particular has such clear motivic development and really encapsulates this idea of these inevitable resolutions, these inevitable developments. When he resolves a phrase, it's so cathartic, partially because of all the tension he's built up prior to that resolution, but also because the way he's built up that tension and the way he's developed those melodic ideas, when he resolves it in the most, I don't want to say the most obvious, but it's the place we expect. And it's kind of like we've been waiting the entire length of the solo for Chris Potter to get there and resolve it that way. And then he does, and it's like this collective sigh of relief in a way. I'll link it, watch that video, listen to that solo. It's a phenomenal piece of improvisation. And it really encapsulates, it just demonstrates to me that ideal balance of spontaneity, because it's clearly improvised, with these developments that just land so well, because harmonically and melodically and rhythmically, they're the places we all wanted that solo to go. I might do a full breakdown of that solo in a future video. Let me know in the comments if that's something you would be interested in. Let's also have a discussion in the comments about your favorite solos, your favorite soloists, why those solos are your favorite solos. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't done so, please click like and subscribe. I know everyone asks you to do that, but it really helps the channel. Over the past month, I think something like 70% of the viewers that have been here over the past month are still not subscribed. So please click all the buttons so you let me know that you want more videos like this. You get to know when I put up more videos like this. It helps everyone. Thank you so much again for watching. My name is David Ryshpan. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.